Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. So in today's episode, I'm going to do something a little different. Someone left me a voicemail on my SpeakPipe, and so I'm going to answer the question that they asked. So let's take a listen.
Do you feel like you would have done better doing low carb during your one meal a day? Not that you haven't done great, but do you feel like the weight loss would have been faster? Thank you.
So I love this question, and I'm really happy this was asked. It's something that I've been asked a lot, I think mostly on my YouTube lives. So I'm happy to talk about it here on the podcast. So first, for some context, I was put on my first diet when I was about 6 years old. And so my entire childhood and teenagerdom and into early adulthood has been, either me on a diet. There were occasional periods where I would be kind of at a normal weight, but generally speaking, I was either overweight or on a diet or just, regaining the weight back, basically. And I was on pretty much every diet, like whatever was popular at the time. I have certainly been aware of all the fads. Like when I was a kid, it was, really important to be low fat. And then after a while, it was like, no, you just really got to count calories. And then it seems like then carbs started to be kind of a thing. Like, you need to be lower carb. And then came Atkins and it was like, you got to be really low carb or no carb. And then there was a grapefruit diet. And, there's just all these things. So it's not that I've never tried diets before or like that my weight was just an issue, when I turned 30. And what I learned, that was the difference for me this time. In 2014, when I had that, I've had enough, I'm not doing this anymore. That moment, I decided in that moment, I'm not going on another diet. Now, that's not to say that I didn't for brief periods, from about 2014 to 2016, there were a couple of times where I'd be like, I need to go lower carb. And I'd do it for, a very short period of time. And I would realize like, this is just not going to work for me. And what I really wanted to figure out, how can I just figure out how to eat? It felt to me like, I've got to crack this code. Like, what is it that I'm doing differently than everybody else around me? Everybody else who's just, going on with their lives, eating the food they want, and they're at a normal weight. Like, why am I not able to do the same thing? Like, for example, my husband is like this skinny guy, and he didn't really get the whole thing about carbs. Like, what do you mean? Like, what, like this has a lot of carbs in it. It was just like not on his radar or calories even. And I thought, how is it that to him, it's not a thing. And to me, it's this huge thing. And I wanted my life to look more like his. So once I started doing intermittent fasting, I was like, oh, this is actually working. I was able to eat the foods I liked, but still there was always this temptation in the back of my mind, like, oh, but what if I combined this with keto? At the time when I first started doing intermittent fasting, keto was really hot, and everybody was doing it, and I kept resisting the urge to even try it. And I had a lot of reasons for doing that. But the main thing that kept me from trying it was I knew I would not do that for the long term. I knew myself well. I looked back at my patterns in the past and I saw like I don't stick with a diet for, after I get the weight off, then I'm done with it. So I was like, I don't want to do that because I felt like if I do that, then I'm going to gain weight again. And I was really at a point where I just felt like if I regain the weight again, I'm going to stop trying. Like it was very hard to even to really get myself ready to lose weight, like back in 2014, like I was really at a point where I'd almost just given up. And I felt like it, because it just always felt like this is a losing proposition. I will lose the weight and then I gain it all back. So why do I keep doing this to myself? And so I was really trying to just break that cycle. Like I wanted this to be permanent. I was looking for permanent weight loss. And so, instead of going on keto, I just observed the people around me on keto. And, I tried to learn from that. I tried to see, over the long term, what happens. And I know that there are some people out there who have had great success on keto. And if right now you're listening to this and like, I love keto, great, like do whatever works for you that you really love to do. What I saw for a lot of people around me who were on keto, they would initially have like some quick losses, but the weight loss would slow down and then they wouldn't stick with it for very much longer after that because it was too difficult. Like they didn't like eating that way. And, eventually what would happen is they would go off the diet completely and then regain the weight. That has been the vast majority of what I have witnessed. And actually, the implication of this question, it's kind of like faster weight loss is better weight loss. And I disagree with that. In the beginning, low carb diets usually have a big drop, like the first week or maybe a couple of weeks, you're going to have a big drop, but it's water weight. And so then what can happen, that can be detrimental in and of itself, because once the weight loss slows down, that can start to feel like you're failing when really you're not. You're doing everything right. But it can just start to feel like you're not doing as good of a job as you did that first week or whatever. But ultimately, because that weight loss, that initial drop is water weight, once you go back to eating carbs, you're gonna get that water weight back, because that's just how your body deals with carbs. Like it retains more water. And to me, that's like a really psychologically tough thing to think about, like that you're gonna drop that weight, but then once you get to maintenance, you're gonna put that weight back on. I would just rather not have to deal with that water weight issue at all. And the thing about fast weight loss is it really takes the focus off the long term. You're just thinking of daily, weekly things instead of just thinking for the very long term, thinking about for the rest of your life, what are you going to do? And, I found for myself, at least, in 2015, especially, I was so much in a rush. I was so impatient. I wanted to lose 5 pounds a week. And if I wasn't losing 5 pounds a week, I felt like a failure. And, I don't even know if there was a single week in that year where I actually did lose 5 pounds. I was just like, I was feeling like fast weight loss is the only way to succeed at weight loss. But it was only towards the end of that year when I realized, I have got to slow down, because this is not working. First of all, this was not working at all. That idea of like constantly switching and, I got to try this and this and this and making it harder and harder and harder. I wasn't making really good progress. I had lost about 20 pounds that year, and I was in the process of regaining it. I think at the end of the year, I had lost a net total of like 15 pounds for, almost an entire year's worth of really hard effort. So I just decided, like, okay, if I had figured out how to lose a pound a week, I would have been down like 50 pounds at the end of the year. So that was kind of like this paradigm shift that happened, where I said, okay, I have got to learn to be patient. And slow weight loss is good. It instills patience. It puts the focus on the long term. Like it's more about lifestyle change. What are the little changes you can make that will get the weight off and keep it off for the rest of your life? So, to answer the question, would I have done better? No, I know myself really well. And first of all, I know that especially when the idea of combining it with OMAD, like I would not have stuck with that at all, because I know for sure that one thing that really kept me motivated in the early days, I didn't have much self-discipline, but what kept me going through the fasting window was the idea that when my eating window opened up, I could eat whatever I wanted. Like that was huge motivation for me. It was like, okay, you mean I can lose weight and I can still have like chips. I could still have cookies if I want them. I can have a sandwich if I want. I can have bread. I can have pasta. And by knowing that I could eat whatever in the eating window, that kept me going. If I had, just had to look forward to, and once I finally get to my eating window, I have to eat really low carb, I would have just I wouldn't have made any progress at all, because I just wouldn't have done it. And as it turned out, I was able to continue to eat all the foods that I loved, and I was able to lose the weight, and I've kept it off. That initial weight, I've kept it off now for 5 years almost. In a couple of months, it'll be 5 years. And to me, that's just huge. Like I've never had that kind of success before with weight loss. And And I really do believe it was the way I started thinking about it. I wasn't thinking about fast and dropping and cutting out food groups. It was more about changing my habits and figuring out what can I do that's sustainable, that I can do for the rest of my life. And when I really, look back, I mean, there's no way of knowing for sure because, I wasn't there, but just based on my own self-knowledge, I think, had I tried combining low carb with intermittent fasting, even if I could have stuck with it, to get the weight off, I know my pattern. My pattern was, okay, as soon as I get down to the goal weight, then I get to add all the foods back in. And what happens when I add all the foods back in? I regain the weight. So again, I just had to learn instead how to just eat all the foods all the time, even when I'm losing weight. And to me, that has just been the best thing ever. But at the end of the day, I want to encourage you to find what works for you. I wrote the books I wrote, and I do this podcast, and I've done the videos on YouTube because I just want to share what worked for me. But, it's a very individual thing. And I think it's important to look to yourself and to your own history and know yourself really well, and then make your own plan based on that. So I hope that answered your question, anonymous user. Thanks for submitting it. And if anyone else out there would like to submit your question, you can use the link in the show notes, or you can go to my website, 6milestosupper.com/podcast, and you can leave your voicemail there. And if it's something that I feel like I can discuss on this podcast, I'll do so. Thanks for listening. Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love and that you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes.